right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully you opened the slides that I put in the chat box, and I'm gonna move through, get started with our session. This one's gonna be a lot of fun. This is one of my favorites, so I think you should have a good time. As you're coming in, just do what you always do and introduce yourself. Tell us name, role, and location. And that will help Anne kind of know who's here. I think she knows many of you, but those of you she hasn't worked with before, it's always helpful to know who you're talking to and where they teach and what they teach. So feel free to join us. All right, we've got Lisa back. Jeanette, I'm going to share the sign-in link in just a little bit here. I'll get it out there for you. All right, Tiffany's back from Riverside. Tiffany, I owe you an email with your membership to Montana PBS. I haven't sent that yet, but stand by. It's still on my desk to send that. I'm still playing catch up from having the plague last week. I missed many days of work and then sort of stumbled through a couple of more last week.
The ordinary cold, or did you have the Rona?
It was just an ordinary head cold that my kids brought home from school and infected all of us with.
They're hitting extra hard because nobody's been sick in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like I kind of miss not leaving my house and wearing masks everywhere because I was so much healthier.
Yep. Hi, Jerry.
Welcome, everybody. All right, so I'm going to move on with having Anne go ahead and introduce herself. If you were at the iMovie session, she probably looks familiar, but go ahead and take it away, Anne. Tell us about you.
Well, I am basically a chameleon. So if you were here last time, hey, it's good to see you back. I'm glad I didn't scare you off too much and that you lived and all of that. I'm going to talk to you tonight about one of my favorite things and a thing that I wish I could be better at. So practice makes permanent, as my friend Zoe used to say. We're going to talk about Procreate and using sketchnotes in classroom. I currently work for Breakout EDU. I get to design games. I'm enrolled in a graphic design program. And as I've been learning the Adobe tools, I'm like, oh, I know how to do this because of Procreate. I know how to do that because of Procreate. So it's fun for me that those skills have transferred. It's a program that's really, really powerful. And there's a lot packed in there. Again, like if you were for iMovie, most of what I know is self-taught or taught because I was curious that I asked someone who knows or whatever, but there's a wealth of resources available on YouTube, on the Procreate website. There's a Procreate manual, an artist handbook, they call it, that you can download through iBooks. There's lots and lots of support. So I'm just going to show you kind of some fun basics. But I will say I have a neighbor, friend who lives down the street here. He's an actual artist and he does paintings with Procreate and they're amazing, amazing. So you can do everything from the stick people that I'm going to show you tonight to like actual art if you're so inclined. So I will, Nikki, do you want to talk real quick about the thing with the stuff?
Yeah, I'll do the housekeeping piece and talk a little bit about finding your roots. So some of you have already found slide 4 because you're all pros and you know how Media Lab works now. I also put the link to our sign-in sheet in the chat box. So make sure that you sign in and get your name on that so that I can send you your OPI credits tomorrow and put you on the wheel of names to earn some prizes. We're going to talk a little bit about finding your roots tonight, and Anne and I have selected a clip to share, and the clip we hope is going to inspire Anne to teach sketchnoting. And I gave her a doozy in the beginning. She came back with, can I get something a bit lighter? But as you know, if you've been watching Finding Your Roots, there's some heavy topics. It's hard to find the light stuff. Henry Louis Gates starts heavy and doesn't get any lighter as time goes on. But we did find one clip that we're going to show, and it is with Mario Lopez. Any Saved by the Bell fans among us? Like just me, maybe?
Heck yes.
Yeah, right. So Slater from Saved by the Bell was a featured guest this season on Finding Your Roots. I'm going to reshare some things so I can make sure that I share the sound so that you're able to see this. And then let in our friend Sharon too here. So this is just a very short clip where Mario Lopez is learning about his great-grandfather's journey to immigrating from Mexico to the United States. And Anne is going to be sketchnoting during this clip, modeling for you how you might have students watch a video clip and use the practice of sketching to synthesize what they're learning. Give me a thumbs up if everything looks and sounds okay.
My full, true, and correct name is Lucian Lopez Burgos. My present place of residence is 3019 18th Street, National City, San Diego, California. I was born January 7th, 1925 in Ranchitos, Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico. Lawful admission for permanent residence in the United States was at San Ysidro, California, under the name of Lucian Lopez Burgos on September 10th, 1957. Wow.
You're looking at the moment that your grandfather declared his intention to become a citizen of the United States of America.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I love it.
And if you look at it closely again, you will see that Luciano legally entered the United States on September 10th, 1957 on foot. Can you imagine?
Wow. Walk, that's crazy.
He was living in Tijuana at the time, so he likely crossed into the United States through the California border town, San Ysidro. And by the time he swore his oath of allegiance, he'd been living in the city for 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And you can see the photo he submitted
Yeah.
with his application there on your left. Does he look like the guy you remember?
Yeah, I can't wait to show my dad.
Do you feel grateful to your grandfather? If he hadn't tried so hard to immigrate, you, of course, might not be here.
Of course. No, I appreciate it, and I just feel like going down rabbit holes just to even learn more, and anxious to show the family, you know, but it does, you know, makes you kind of proud.
All right, so that was a pretty short clip. So now I'm gonna stop sharing and hand it over to Anne, and she's gonna demonstrate
what I didn't get done. Okay, so I did not get a lot finished here, but I'll show you what I did do. And then I'll show you some little shortcuts and tricks that you can use if you want to live sketchnote. I'll say right now, I'm not good at it. Lots of stick people and notes. And then I go back and clean it up later, because what it does is help me synthesize what I heard and what I saw. So I'm just gonna quick show you this awful thing that I started scribbling before my pen started skipping out. I hope it's not gonna die. I am using an iPad. I think I'd like a 4th generation, or I don't know what generation it is, but a newish older iPad and an older version Apple Pencil. So this is about as far as I got. And you're like, oh my gosh, how did you draw those guys so fast? I totally cheated. Yesterday when Nikki and I were exchanging emails asking me if I would like sketch something with this topic, I went ahead and I picked some pictures online of both the host and Mario Lopez. And I did do these rather fast, but I was able to just pull them in because I saved them as icons, which is one of the fun little tricks that I'm going to show you. So you could see I didn't get a lot done in that 1 minute and some second clip, but having a little bit of time and practice at doing this, people can get really fast at it really quickly, or really good at it really quickly, I guess I should say. It's kind of just building that mental muscle and your physical muscle that goes with that to be able to do it more quickly. So I want to just say real quick first what Procreate is. If you don't have it, it is a paid app. It's $10 for the iPad app and I think $5 for the iPhone app. I have it on both. I luckily downloaded it on my phone back when it was still free. The thing I usually use is on my phone to like edit quick photos or fun things. Like I took a picture of my friend Chandel and erased her eyebrows and then added a bunch of different eyebrows. So, you know, on the fly, little things like that are really fun to do with it. But when I want to do a little bit more serious sketching or drawing or mapping out ideas for things, I switch to my iPad. So with this program, you can use your finger, you can use an pencil or any stylus. I first learned about this app through Sylvia Duckworth. She's an educator from Canada who was working for EdTech team that did a lot of Google and Apple trainings. And she's a master sketchnoter. In fact, if you've seen sketchnotes online, very likely she did them. She's really big into sketchnoting for education. And there's a group of people who are really in charge of that movement. But she introduced me to Procreate. And the whole time I was like, what? Whoa. So she uses a different stylus called a, let me think about this, Musume Notier. Sarah, is that right? It looks like, yeah, Nikki's like, yeah. It has
it is. Isn't it like Amopay? Maybe Moose. I don't know.
I can't remember, but
You're on the right track.
Yeah, a little tip that I kept breaking off. Yeah, there you go. Nikki's holding it up. It's got this little tip that flexes on the surface of your, yep. That's what I never did, is unscrew it and put it away, right? So if you can see that little tip, it rests flat on your screen and allows you to really smooth movement over the surface of your iPad. My pencil here is awesome. I love it because it feels like the weight of a pen or something to me, but this thing dies rather quickly. So pros and cons to all, but really the simplest tool is just your finger or any device or object with a stylus tip. So with this app, you can do it, like I said, everything from sketching to full-blown art. What I'm going to show you really quickly is some of the gestures and features of this. I've done this presentation, 3 or 4 times, I'd say, Nikki, and every time it's completely different because I learn something new every time. So, and also because what I'm doing at the time sometimes doesn't work. So when you open up Procreate for the first time, well, first off, how many of you actually have the app? Here's no. Okay, so you're just here for entertainment. Awesome, cool, Alita. Good. So if you do have it, you definitely don't have to follow along with me. In fact, feel free to doodle along as you listen. I'm going to show you some things that, as a matter of fact, I learned some new things today. I'm going to try to do this where my iPad is over here on the right and my presentation screen is on the left, but you guys do have access to all the slides. And what I tried to do was in the speaker notes down below the slides, I put a ton of information, way more than I'm going to get a chance to talk about tonight, but I wanted you to feel like you had lots of resources if you weren't able to get to the app tonight and wanted to later, or go back and relook at something. So what you see over here on the right side is my actual iPad with the Procreate app open, and then on the left here is my presentation screen so that you can see and see at the same time. So that really crummy sketch that I was just working on is here on the left. Right now it's called Untitled Artwork. And these are all sort of dwelling in my gallery right now. So your gallery is like the place that holds all of your, I'll call it artwork, knowing that they're really sketches or sometimes notes like you see over here. When I was teaching remote school online last year, I would have my iPad hooked up similar to what I'm displaying here. And then I could use that as kind of a whiteboard for myself. So, and it's very base. It can be that all the way up to like actual, you can do animations and even just doodles and sketches. So I'm going to take you back in time a little bit here in my gallery because I want to show you a couple things. First you can see that I have what are called stacks, and those are collections of quote unquote art that somehow I've deemed to belong together. I've put on here on the left side in the slides how to actually organize this. What I would do if I wanted to put these together, so like the sketch I attempted here tonight, this one, and this one here that I was messing around with earlier, if I wanted to organize those into a group, I could do that by just moving one over the top of the other. I'm just doing that with my finger. The other thing you can do is pinch to preview something. So when I spread my fingers out on the screen, it'll make that image bigger or shrink it down smaller. I can rotate things by just using my fingers. One of the things that I had never used before and I didn't know was there until today is when you're on your gallery here and you have an image, if you swipe left, it allows you to do some things that I just never knew that menu was there. So you can delete things that way, but this is another way to share, just like how if you were with me for iMovie, there's multiple ways to share. It's the same here. There's multiple ways to do almost everything. Duplicate is really handy, and I've actually used that quite a bit because if you want to mess around with something without ruining your original, make a copy of it. But what I want to do here, I'm going to put these together by using that press and drag to organize. I'm just going to hold down on this one and drag it over the top of that one, and it makes what's called a stack. And it comes in there as stack. But to name it, I just tap on it and it comes up and I can name it Mario. So now I know when I'm looking back through time at projects that I've worked on, they're kind of organized together. And you can do that at any time. But one of my very first sketchnoting sketch, I think it was this one right here. And I learned from Sylvia Duckworth when I got to meet her at ISTE. Sarah, were you there for that? Were you with me on that one?
I was, and I was scared to death because she's so amazing and you're so artistic. And I was like,
What, my sketch with my stick people? But one of the things she said that really made this seem a lot more accessible to me was you're building your visual vocabulary. That's all you're doing. No, this doesn't have to be for anyone besides you. And so what she suggested was get to know how to draw a couple of things really quickly and really well. And you'll be able to either just whip that out really fast or save it as an icon so that when you want to use that again, you can just pull it in later. So when we were meeting with her, she talked about like common concepts like critical thinking or teamwork or ideas, those kind of educational vernacular that we have that would be represented in an icon if you were listening to somebody give a talk or whatever and you wanted to really quickly access that term. So she kind of showed us what she does, which I'll show you in a minute, but you can see here, this is just a little stick guy. And I didn't know that I had a stick man style, but it turns out that I do. She just showed us like a little, kind of like a little bean shaped guy with a head, and very simple because this is for you. This is for you to process and to absorb information that you get from, could it be Twitter? It could be a TED Talk. It could be something you've read, to process that in your mind, synthesize it and come up with your own idea about what it is. Look, this was 2016 and I still remember that because I have a visual representation of it. So one of the other things she said was, besides building your vocabulary visually and practicing those icons, is give yourself a challenge to do a sketch every day. And I'm going to talk about an opportunity that I took a couple times actually. And I don't know if you can see on my walls over here, I have these canvases that are framed up there. Those are annual events that I think they still do. I haven't done it in a few years, but it's called, oh my gosh, it totally just slipped my mind. It's in here, Sketch 50, or Pass the Sketch Note. So Sketch 50 was a daily challenge where every day for 50 days, you're given a challenge of something to sketch. So it was like a themed kind of a thing. So here I just labeled them day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. But the year before that, 2017, they gave us all like a topic or a title. So you can see here, I titled it by that. Day 1 was light bulb, day 2 was megaphone. And what I found was day 1, a lot of times I would use day 1 sketch in day 2. And day 2 was in day 3, because 1, I didn't want to have to draw that thing again, but I was processing how this all fit together. And it was when I did this that I was like, oh my gosh, that's why this is so powerful, because you're making those connections, or your students are making those connections in their minds when they're physically manipulating something like this. So this is just, again, to show you kind of the collection of things that I've done. This Pass the Sketchnote is really cool. You sign up on Twitter, or you sign up through a Google form link from Twitter, and you get grouped with a group of people around the world. Some of the people are drawing with pen and pencil, paper, and others are doing more digital. So they group you with people, and then they do a drawing, and they have however many hours to pass it to you. So they share their version on Twitter and tag you, and then you download it and you add your part, and then you tag the next person. And what ends up happening is you get this collaborative sketch that's been drawn by people all around the world. What I thought was cool about this is, what if you did something like this with your students? They all drew one thing, passed the paper, add their own iteration to it. They're practicing now because they're drawing that a second time. They pass it again, and every time their sketch gets more and more involved because they're combining that with what they've learned and seen from their peers. So I loved this idea, and I just thought, whoa, 1, it was cool to make the world small like that. 2, it was really fun to be able to practice drawing and see my style emerging compared to others, and realize, oh man, I have a long way to go. But 3, to make that connection of how this would be amazing to use with kids. Nikki or Sarah, I know there's probably others, but would one or the other of you, just, I know you use this, Sarah, with students. Could you just maybe talk to them about kind of how that's gone?
Well, it's hard when you're talking about the actual tool and having iPads and having the license and all of that. So, if you have the ability to do it, it's great, because it really does teach them some skills, especially in the layering of things, which I'm sure Anne will talk about. But I, a lot of times, will just give them a sheet of paper to do it on, and then that can just go into their folder or their binder. And this isn't for everybody. I'm one of those people that I'm creative, but I'm not artistic. And so this is hard for me. But some kids are amazing at it, and it's whatever can make the connection to whatever they're learning. So if they can remember by having a picture drawn next to it, then I think it's amazing.
Yeah. What kinds of things have you had kids sketch?
Just articles. If we've read an article on like digital citizenship, or obviously things that are really kind of graphic, like you think about life science and things like that. Anything that involves a kind of like a timeline or a cycle is always good and easy. But I also just like having them read something and then kind of do their sketchnoting, and then meet with their peers to discuss how they're, like, what they got out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really good.
I think so too. And what you said about being creative but not artistic, I think I've learned through my graphic design courses that you can learn to be more artistic. You have to choose to be creative. And that's just, it's not, you're not creative or you are. We all have the ability to create. It's just some of us tell ourselves, no, we're not creative. And so kids tend to do that too. Giving them opportunities to do that lets them see themselves as creators. And again, like I said, this is for them. So if their little scrunchy little stick man helps them solidify an idea with whatever it was that they were connecting it with, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so I'm going to get back over here. I'm not going to say it, Nikki. I'm not going to say it. Hold. Okay, there we go. There we go. So this is, again, the gallery, as I'm showing you here. This is where, when you open the Procreate app, this is kind of where you get started. So in the gallery, this is where you can create a new project. But I'm going to actually go into one that I've already made. And this was the one that I started yesterday. So you can see I just selected that stack and then chose the artwork in there. So that's the gallery. There's some cool things that you can do in there. Once you're actually in the app, I want to give you kind of a little tour of the interface. And like I said, there's.
And can I interrupt you for just a minute?
Yes.
I'm getting some questions in the chat. Can you go back to like the main screen when you first open up Procreate?
The gallery?
You don't have any sketches yet, like you've just downloaded the app. How would you get started?
Good question. Okay, so right in this top right corner right here, I noticed that I want to touch my computer screen and click on my iPad. So right here in the top right corner of the Procreate app is the plus sign. And that's where you can create a new sketch, a new canvas. Oh, I'll talk to you a little bit more about the canvas sizes in a minute, but I'll just say I almost always just do screen size. It works well for print. It works well for like your hand size. It comes out looking nice if I'm going to use it digitally. When I'm creating breakout EDU games with this, I use screen size and it goes onto the platform well. So when you click that plus sign, the first thing that you're going to be asked to choose is the canvas size. I'm just going to choose, and I would encourage you to just choose screen size. It comes in whichever orientation you have your device sitting. So if you have your iPad sitting horizontal, landscape, I guess, it's going to be that way. If when you're starting the app, you have your iPad held sideways, it'll come in that way. You can still just turn your canvas whichever way you want it to be, and it'll orient itself that way. So if you want to have something that comes out landscape, you can draw it landscape. Doesn't matter which way you hold your device. So you can just turn it. I like to use mine sideways because a lot of the things that I'm making a lot of times are made for screens or a digital presentation that needs to be landscape. So yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that in the chat. If you guys have any other things, Nikki, that would be awesome for if you just watch that for me. Okay, so let me go back here because I just want to get into this one. So we can pretend that I opened a new one. When you're looking at your very first Procreate sketch, we'll call it sketch, there's a couple of pieces on here that are important to know what they are and what they do. So when I'm talking about the interface, that's what you see when you're looking, when it's facing you, it's you and your iPad, here's what you see. I put all of this down in the speaker notes because there's a lot. And these were where I was like, oh my gosh, I never noticed that there. So up in the top right, you have the painting tools. The first one is paint. This brings up a selection of brushes that you can paint with. So while I was waiting, oh, I should show you this real quick. Pause a second. I'm going to show you where this sketch started and how it ended here. So just for fun, I'm going to click on this little wrench here, which is the actions, and go to video and do a time-lapse replay. It's going to show you from the beginning of this sketch what I did on this particular masterpiece. You can see that I have this grid. You can see that I started with some junk. I like to do that to kind of get myself into the mode of drawing. Here I am sketching out the host. And I bring in Mario. And can you see that I'm drawing right on his face? We'll get to that. Just trying to make a family tree. This was what I was doing while I was waiting, Nikki. My son came in and he's like, it's kind of short notice to be working on your plan right now. I was like, hey, punk, I was waiting. Okay, so you can see every single iteration of what I did to get to here. It's obviously not finished. It's not even where I ended when I was playing, but I wanted you to be able to see this is all just stuff. So as that was playing on there, what did you notice that I was doing? I'll play it again. What do you think? What do you see happening? Okay, what did you notice? Was I doing art? You might say, I mean, it's not art to me, but I was just doodling. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say it looked like you were just brainstorming.
That's the perfect answer. Yes, that's exactly what I changed my mind a lot. Good, Sharon. Yes, I did. And the one thing that I also hope you noticed was I would draw something as I was brainstorming it and I was moving it around the page. The reason I could do that is because I was using this feature here, which I'll get to in a minute, layers. I'm gonna just put this right out from the beginning. The first couple of times you use Procreate, you will try drawing everything in the same layer. And then you're gonna be like, why can't I move that? It's all stuck together. And I cussed. I'll admit it, I cussed a lot. So once again, you practice and you get to know what all these little icons are and what they all do, you'll get better at doing this. You can change your mind and not feel like you have something to cuss about. So the painting tools are these over here on the right. You've got your brushes, your smudge, and then your erase. And if you notice, they all pull up the same set of brushes, whether I'm smudging, brushing, or erasing. When I'm painting, I have a whole bunch of different tools, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but I typically use the gel pen. Oh, good question, Sharon. I'll show you in a sec. I went in here and I did make some edits because what I notice is, I'm going to add another layer for Sharon. I'm going to click on this, it looks like the two little stacks of paper right up there. And I'm going to, hit the plus and it'll put a new layer in above whichever one I had selected, so blue. If you notice here, when I draw, I'm just pinching with my fingers. The harder I push, the thicker my line gets and the darker my line gets. So I want to just know that when I draw with something, it's going to come out the same. So you can edit these brushes to taper off, to kind of have a jittery little, to look like they've been watered down. You can get really crazy with the brushes. I don't really tend to mess with that a lot. Once I find one I like, I leave it alone. I'm going to show you how I'm making it thicker and thinner here in a second, but I'm just going to draw here. And I notice that what's happening is when I'm moving faster, that's when my brush is getting thinner. So I just need to work at a more consistent speed. Okay, so when I'm smudging, what that does is just like it sounds, smudge. And when I'm erasing, again, you choose the pen, quote unquote, that you want to use to erase with. And that does all kinds of different effects when you're erasing. So if you think about like a textured eraser or a different grit of sandpaper or whatever, you're going to get a different effect when you're taking stuff off. So those are the brushes. Your layers here are, as I showed you, what I typically do is I add image layers, which are in there right now, and you can see that they're showing. I've got the host here, and I've got Mario down here, and then I add a grid layer. It's turned off right now, but I'm going to turn it on there by clicking this, which I'll get to here in a minute. I like to add this grid layer because especially, let me go back, in my earlier sketch notes when I was actually trying to organize my thoughts, I wanted it to look neat and I wanted to be able to kind of control where stuff ended up. So let me see, like this one right here. I wanted those little sketches down at the bottom to all be in one line. I wanted the writing to kind of be level. And so what I did was added a layer of a grid, which I'll have to move it up, so that I can write in there and keep it my letters uniform shape and size. So if I go back to Mario, if I wanted to write his name somewhere on the page, what I might do is first select my brush because I want to add pigment, they call it. I'm going to choose textures, and then I'm going to choose grid. Whoa, and now my iPad's going to shut itself off. Hold on. Okay, what? Okay, take two. So add a new layer. Grab my brush, textures, grid. Over here on the left, you see where it shows the sidebar. Number 6 on that list is your brush size. I want to make this as big as possible. And you see how it's quite large. I like to start as big as possible. The other thing about your grid layer, if you do it like this, don't lift your finger or your pen and try doing it again because it will never line up, never. So what I try to do is go over the entire thing with my finger just held down the whole time. And then, because watch this, I'm going to do it for you so you don't have to. I'm going to write in here Mario's name. Oops, still writing with that texture. Come over here, choose my gel pen again. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to start writing Mario's name. And I'm going to pretend that this is really precise and wonderful, and I've mastered some font or whatever. Okay, so I've written his name. Maybe I've put some time into adding some texture to these layers or whatever. And now I'm ready to move that name down under Mario's picture. There's a problem. I can't because it's connected to that grid. So this was where I was saying, I promise you're going to do that. And it's no biggie because what I'll show you how to undo, but I'm just using 2-finger tap to undo. 3-finger tap allows you to redo. Let me see if I'm pretty sure I have that on this next slide here. These gestures are so helpful to know. Pinch to zoom, 3-finger swipe to cut paste. That was what I learned today. 2 fingers to undo, 3 fingers to redo. So I'm going to go back here to Mario. Instead of drawing in that grid layer, I'm going to add a new layer. So what I'm doing is writing on top, on the layer above that grid. So now when I write Mario's name, get a little thicker there so you can see it. When I want to move it to underneath his picture, I can just select it at the top and move, oops, only his name. The grid doesn't come with it. So that's kind of an important thing, is to be aware of those layers and what you can do in there. I add a new layer almost every time I go to draw a new thing. Eyes, add a new layer, nose, add a new layer. You can consolidate them, which I'll show you in just a minute, but I like to do everything in layers if I can. So you've got your painting tools over here on the right, your sidebar on the left. The other thing that's over here is your brush size thickness is this one on the left side. The one below it is the opacity of the brush. So if you want something to be a little bit more see-through or kind of look like it's airbrushed, it better be in the right layer at least, you can adjust that opacity and kind of give it that see-through look. So if you want it to be more opaque, turn it up. If you want it to be less opaque or more transparent, turn it down, thicker, thinner, like that. I'm just going to use 2 fingers and tap to get rid of that. This thing in the middle, I'd never noticed that until I was putting this guide together for you. Number 7 here is what's called the modify button. That brings up the eyedropper. So when I've drawn something, so let me make it a little thicker. Let's say I've drawn this thing. If I click that modifier button, it brings up that little targeted thing so that I can pick another color somewhere else. So I can move that around. Whoops. See, I don't even know how to use it really well. Well. It just gives you another layer of control, but that modifies it. And then below that, if you're not a fan of the finger gestures, like undo, redo, 2 fingers to undo, 3 fingers to redo, you can use the back and forward buttons down here. You can undo up to 250 motions or movements. So if you really messed something up, you can go back. You can press and hold it to go way back, like it was just doing there. Or again, you can use the 2-finger tap. I tend to like the tapping because I have just a little more control, but do what you wish. Okay, so those are kind of the options when you're in there. We're going to dig into the editing tools a little bit more later. But for now, just know that that's what those are. And then there's descriptions of what each one of those buttons does there in the speaker notes below this slide. So gestures, I kind of talked a little bit about, but you could see me zooming over here. I'm just using my 2 fingers like this, which we all kind of know from doing tablet-based work. I love when I have something like a business card or a picture and I want to make zoom on it when I go like this and it doesn't work. What? We've been spoiled by our technology. So yeah, the zoom tool is really useful because if you want to get really detailed with those big dark eyes, you can zoom way in to see his eyelashes and really get some fine detail in there. As I was saying, one of the ones that I learned today was this 3-finger swipe gesture. So you put 3 fingers up and just kind of go. That allows you to bring up this copy paste menu. I always make this hard. I have to go up here. Oops. I go up to Mario and then I click this arrow button and then I go into this and I click on add. What a pain. All you have to do is do this 3-finger swipe and there it is. Yay. 3-finger scrub clears the entire, I'm not sure if it does the layer or the entire canvas. So I'm going to try it. I'm just going to take my 3 fingers and scrub back and forth. Yay, it's the layer. So if I've really made a mess of one of these layers here, I can just take my 3 fingers and scrub it back and forth to get rid of it. So now I'm going to undo that because I kind of want Mario there. So those are some of the gestures. I will also say there's a lot more and you can customize your gestures too. So if you notice that there's something, I can't even think of something off the top of my head, some gesture that you are doing frequently or some action in your workflow of doing a drawing that you do frequently, you can add your own custom gesture in the settings. I have never done that, but I know that you can do it. Okay, so we're going to talk about colors because this was one of the things I learned from Cynthia Duckworth and I was like, what? But there's a lot more there. So on my screen, what I did here, and it's not super effective because it's hard to see. There's a lot there. I numbered each part and then I defined what it was down there in those speaker notes. So I'm just going to kind of recap it on the right side over here on my actual iPad, but you can find this again down there in those speaker notes. So up here in the top right, this little dot shows the active color. So if I draw with that right now, if I have a brush selected and I start drawing, it's going to be this kind of peachy pink color. It's going to be kind of thick. I'm not sure if I still have my gel pen selected, but thickish, but it's going to be pretty transparent. So I'm going to turn that opacity up, not with my mouse, but with my finger. And I'm going to leave the thickness alone for right now and just try it out. Okay, now first of all, where did I draw that? I need to check to make sure. Yep. So what I did, I don't know if you can see that, but I actually drew on the picture of Mario. So this is like taking your old yearbook and drawing on someone's face. You can't move that. It's there forever. Luckily, I can two-finger tap and undo that. I'm going to add a layer so that I can mess around and draw on Mario's face, but then be able to move it or clear that later. So you see how it's kind of medium thickness and it's opaque and it's that peachy color. The little button right here, the little dot, is what tells me the active color. So if I click on that or tap on that, I have all of these different menus that I can do to access color. If I first go to the disk, which is the bottom left-hand most, I'll show you, Sharon. If we go to the bottom most option there, which is disk, this to me was really confusing at first. It's got reticle, I think is what those are called, those dots. There's a big one and a little one. The outside one controls the hue, and the inside one is the temperature, I think, or I don't know. I'm not an art teacher, but what happens is if I want to choose something in that red family, I go with the big one around to red, and then the little one inside tells me what shade of red. So I can move those around in here to kind of customize the color and the shade of that color. For me, that was very confusing and overwhelming. I don't use the wheel very often. Classic is more what you see like when you're on Google Drawings or something. You get that menu of your different colors. It's the same type of thing. It's just presented in a way that's maybe more recognizable for us. If you notice right here above that color gradient thing, you've got sort of a light yellow and then that brownish orangish yellow that's right now. The one on the left is the primary color. So it's the one that I'm using right now. It's that active color. The secondary color, which is a color dynamic thing, is to the right of it. So these colors are, I don't know if they go well together or what, but it'll always bring up a secondary color for you, depending on what you choose there. So I'm not sure if it's based on history. I think it's your most recent use, but I could be wrong there. Moving over harmony, again, I've never really used this. It shows you what would be across the color wheel from it. So if I'm in this blue stage, this color across is going to be its harmonious color. You have to think back to art theory to understand that. So value, I've never really used, but again, if you're into like photo editing, you've probably seen these. If you know the hex code for a certain color, because you're a nerd like me, you can specify that right there. So that's fun. But what I most often use is the palettes. And your Procreate app will probably come with some palettes preloaded. You can add more. So some years ago, a lot of years ago, some friends of mine asked me to do some artwork for them, I'll call it. And so they wanted a Harry Potter theme. So I went and I found online like the Gryffindor and the Hufflepuff and those little things. And then I held on there, which I'll show you in a minute, to get the color, saved it as what's called a swatch, and then made it into a palette, which is what you see here. I now know there's a much easier way to do that, but I didn't know at the time. So to create a new palette, you just click the plus and look at this. You can create a new palette by yourself, just whatever ones you want, to pinpoint a color in any image or any sketch or anything that you have in there. You just long hold on that part of the picture. So if I really want to hone in on his color of white hair, I can move that up there. And do you see how it's got the rings? The top one is the primary color. So when I select that, it puts it over here in my color picker thing. And all I have to do is tap in the palette to add that to my palette. I could go down a little further in his forehead, long hold. I can go down, oops, I can go down to this brighter spot on his head. I can tap there. So what I'm doing is I'm manually building a color palette of Henry's face. That's going to take me a long time. So a better option is, which this is what I learned today, click the plus and say that you want to do it from either your camera, a file, or a photo. So when I choose from a photo, I can go in here and I can select this picture that I have of the host and Mario together, and it will automatically create a palette that's pulled out of colors from these two pictures. So you can see Mario's suit, his jacket is in there, represented, both their skin colors are in there, hair, Mario's dark eyes. So that is super cool. I wish I would have known that a long time ago. But again, you can make your own. Sarah, look at this. I'm going to delete one because you don't need this anymore. Swiping left will almost always bring up some sort of menu. So when I swipe left, I could choose to share this with somebody else who had the Procreate app, or I can go ahead and get rid of it. And just like everything, it gives you the option to make sure you actually know what you're doing. So those are the colors. And again, I put really detailed descriptions of all of those in there. The active color is really cool because I'm going to show you how to delete a layer because Sharon asked about it. But let's say that I have drawn this scribbly thing right here and I want to get rid of that layer. Yes, you can name the palette. I'll show you that too. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on the layering menu, and I'm gonna go here to where it's highlighted, swipe left, and delete. Ta-da! Okay, so let me show you a couple of other things that this dot up here does. I'm gonna draw a shape in that. Oops, no, look, I did it again. I'm gonna add a layer. I'm gonna draw a shape now. And I want to fill this shape with this blue color down here, which I know was from Mario's jacket. So actually, I'll come over here. It changed my primary color dot. I'm just going to tap this with my finger and drag that dot down into the circle and let go. Now, that's called flood. And you see how it didn't just flood my circle, it flooded my entire drawing. That's because the threshold is too high. So when I'm doing that, if you look across the top, can you see that blue line that says color drop threshold, 92.5%? I haven't let go on my finger yet. With my finger still pressed on the iPad and holding that blue, I'm just going to drag it back to the left and you can see the threshold drop. If I drop it way back, it kind of pushes itself away from the inside edges of that loop I drew. If I go to the right, it spills out. So I want to come back so it just fills the loop, but not flooding out. I want it to be close to the edges. The reason it overflowed was because you see how my line is kind of thin over here, a little bit more opaque. If I make a shape that's not connected, like this right here, it's going to flood the whole page. So it's kind of like filling it up with water and expecting it to stay in there. It just won't do it. So I can close that with whatever color I want and then flood it, or I can back the threshold way off and see if that will capture it in there. And in this case, oh, there it goes. So I had to back the threshold off way low to get it to actually fill like that. Okay, so while we're on it, I'm going to answer your question there, Sharon. Yes, you can name your palette. So it comes in as palette from image or whatever. if you just tap on that particular palette, it brings up your keyboard and it'll let you change it right there. So I'm going to say Mario and oops, no capital. I'll just use HLG. So now you always have that. And fun fact, you can share your palettes. So if you have a coworker where you guys do science and you're working in the unit on rocks and the type of specific igneous rocks that maybe have a certain group of colors that go with them, you could share your palette that you pulled in from some rocks you found with your colleague. Okay, so I'm going to delete this layer one more time. Actually, no, I'm not going to delete it because I had to keep adding new ones. I'm going to clear it. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. Instead of swiping on that blue layer, I'm just going to tap real quick. This brings up a whole new menu, which I'm going to get into a lot more here in a minute. But when I tap, I want to clear. That just erases that layer. Remember that my other option for clearing that layer would have been to take 3 fingers and scrub back and forth like that. So now I have a clean layer to draw in. Okay, so I know that's already been a lot. Let me show you a couple of other quick things, and then I'm going to let you play for a minute. We talked about palettes. Within this slide 16 here, I gave you a whole bunch of information on the terminology and also how to create those palettes. The palette is the collection of colors here, and each individual color is called a swatch. I thought the swatch was the whole thing because I think of like a piece of fabric, but the swatch is the individual color wherever it came from. So I explained in there how to delete swatches, reorder swatches, because it's sometimes nice to be able to visually see the difference between these shades of tan or whatever. To move them next to each other is really useful. Like, did I accidentally duplicate this one, or are they actually different? Oh, nope, they're different. So it's helpful to know some of that stuff. I put that in pretty detailed explanation there on slide 16. That's how I got Mario's face color, by the way. The other The other clip that Nikki gave me to sketch was really fascinating, but it was about how when Mario's great, I believe, grandfather, he actually immigrated to the Americas and left. There were records of it, but what they found was that they, at that time, put them into, put people, immigrants, into a caste system, C-A-S-T-E, caste. And the way that they would categorize and classify them was by the shade of brown of their skin. And when Mario heard that, they go into a great deal about how they classified them. They were in 16 major shade groups. And I thought I was going to have to draw that. And as I got into it, I was like, there's no way to do this in a politically correct way. But I had already made the so I looked up like 16 shades of skin, which actually this is useful to have if you are going to draw people. When I create games for Breakout EDU, I want to be very, very mindful that I'm making diverse characters. So if you just have like Peach as the box of crayons was back in the day, you're missing out on lots and lots and lots of people. So it's kind of useful to find or have or use a photo, even better, to actually pull real life people's skin tones into a palette. Sharon asked while you're doodling, sketching, if I'd show one more time how to name the palette. So I'm going to do that real quick. When you're in your palette there, you just tap on the title. So where I'm going to be tapping, Sharon, is right on this word that says untitled here above this palette. And it brings up the keyboard so that I can type in there. So I can call it people or whatever you want it to be called. I mean, if you're going for a theme, like here I had the Harry Potter, here I had the Google colors. These are the ones that come with it, comic, new drink. If there's one you find you use most often, like this iconic has great colors in it for me. Oh, I want to show you how to add to. You can set it as your default. So when you open it, it'll, yeah. Swiping left and right is smart because it's kind of like right clicking on a computer. You'll always find treasure in there. If you do a sketch and you notice that there's a color in there that you seem to be missing, like I should just turn all these on here. What I was going for was like a family tree. So I wanted to add some leaves, but I noticed that when I pulled in the palette, there wasn't any green. So in the palette of my photo here, I could go ahead and select that green color. Oops. Here. So I'm holding it down. And then I just tap within that palette anywhere. Well, right now there's too many things. So I'm going to get rid of the white. You just, when you want to delete something, you just hold down on it and delete it. So when you want to add the current color, you just tap a vacant square there in the palette and it'll add that color to your palette. Kind of handy to be able to do. So I've really junked this up a little with the last couple minutes that you're drawing or watching the video. I'm going to clean this up just a bit so it actually looks like something. If you're watching, do you remember that I picked a weird brush for my eraser? I chose like a, what was it called? Soft pastel. Kind of looks like a pastel crayon on a canvas. So when I erased, I got that sort of staticky look. So I'm going to go back up to my eraser here and pick something a little bit more solid, like my gel pen. Oops. So that I can erase smoother. Are you ready? You guys okay if I go on a little bit? Review, go back a step? Okay. Which part, Sharon? Paint. Oh, okay. Yep, sure. So what I was doing while you were otherwise occupied, I was going to try to work this into an actual kind of a sketch note. And what I did was I went into my layers, I turned off the grid, I turned off the writing that I was messing around with while I was waiting. I turned off this banner thing. And what I have here, I noticed was this tree that was kind of scraggly looking. And I'm going to get to this part in a minute, but right, right here at the top where there's this arrow, that's the transform tool. If I select that, you see that this tree thing that's selected right now is only a part of the tree. And the reason is because I have drawn this tree in multiple layers. So I'm going to fix that here in just a second. But what I was trying to do was, by fixing that tree, make it look a little bit better. So I was painting along. So I'm not sure if I showed this, I don't remember, but I want to go back and grab that brown, because right now I see that my active color is black. I want to be this brown. So I'm going to use my finger and I'm just going to press down on the screen where that brown is to make that brown become the active color. So I'm going to go up here to my gel pen, and you can pick any brush or pen that you want, pencil. I just like the gel pen because it's uniform thickness and opaqueness. That's probably the wrong words there, but you mess around with these. There's some really cool ones. I often use the round brush and I just keep it narrow. If you make it thick, it's really thick. So if I use the round brush, I just bring the brush size down to pretty small, like 2%. Try to notice too, see when I slide this, it tells me over on the right or on the side there what percentage the size is. If you want to be able to draw something consistently, it's kind of useful to know that number. I know one of the things you can do in your settings is to save those, but I've never done that. I always just mess around with it. So I'm going to make it be like 4%, do a little test line. That looks pretty good to me. That's the round brush. So I tend to use either the gel pen or the round brush because I just like that consistently thick, opaque line, but play with it. So what I was doing was I was drawing along, and I noticed when I scribbled out, I wanted to clean that up. So a couple of things I see that I did here. I retraced around the trunk of the tree in the same layer that I put Mario's name. I don't actually mind that I did that because I'm going to merge those in just a second. So what I did was I lined up one of these sets of branches. It's actually layer 15 here underneath the tree trunk, because I knew if I was making his family tree, I wanted to be able to add lots and lots of different generations. So I just made this, I made one of these little Y-shaped things and then I duplicated it. And the way that I duplicated it was swipe left, duplicate, swipe left, duplicate. So then I have a different layer for every branch. What's handy about that is as this tree grows bigger and bigger, I can make the, let's say this top one here. Oops, I can make it smaller, which I'm going to get to this in a minute by shrinking it up and then just put it onto the top of another branch. So see where this is kind of messily joined up there. If I tap that, or if I select it, again, I'll get to that menu, I promise, but it's highlighted with that little, somebody called them marching ants, the little dotted line. I'm just going to tap with my pencil to the right and that barely nudges it over, just a tiny amount. So then it kind of looks right. So the other thing I was trying to do was I noticed that the branch was kind of thick compared to the other one. So I wanted to erase it. And this was where I was talking about the grainy thing. So it looks to me like this top branch is too thick. I need to erase a little bit. So what I had done when I was demonstrating earlier was I just randomly chose a brush. The erase, so if I go into my brush and choose stipple, I'm going to get this little array of dots. If I erase with that, it'll actually take pigment, as they call it, away, only in that layer though, in the form of those little dots. And that's not what I want. I want it to erase like an eraser. So I have to pick a brush that is solid and opaque, like the marker there or pen that I was using. So I'll just go back to painting and use the round brush to erase this side. So see how that's really, really, really thin? I want to make that thicker for my eraser. And I can just erase like that. I don't have to be super, super careful because there's some really cool tricks that I'll show you here in a second. So I've kind of erased it. Now what I'm going to do is I want to switch back to black. So I'll hold my finger down on there and oops, too thick. Draw in that branch too thin. This is why the gel pen is kind of my favorite. Okay, now what I want to do is I'm going to come back here. This was I erased out of the middle of that tree, and you can see the trunk is beneath it. What I want to do is merge those two, well, all of those bits of tree so that I can combine it as one. Now there's a couple things to know. When I merge something, it actually takes the layers and compresses them together. So they're forever tied together. You can do that, but what happens is then, if I want to move just one of those branches, I can't because they're, again, tied together because I merged them. So maybe a better way to do that is to combine them. Let me get that together. What that does, like, so I know that the outline of the trunk with his name, the trunk itself, and all these branches are going to go together in a group. What I can do is choose one of them. So like the trunk here, I've already done it, I can tell. Oops. I'm going to combine it with the layer below. So tap once and combine down. It puts those two sections of branch in one group, which now I can either move separately, or if I choose the group instead of just the branch, I can move the whole group. Lesson learned the hard way. I would suggest combining instead of merging, because another thing that you can do is once you have a group made, you can just drag these layers into those groups. So if I want all my tree layers to be together, oops, I can just do it like this. I can just drag them into the group. Kind of like you can if you use Keynote or slides, you can move the slides around. So now when I move these layers, or when I move that group, it's going to move all the branches together, but I still have the ability to move one. So there's one exception here. Notice that I moved my layers now, so this looks real weird because it's on top of the trunk. I want to move the trunk back on top so that it's with on top of that branch, because I'm going to show you, I am going to merge here in just a second. So I'm going to move that to the top, and then I want to move the actual brown of the trunk to the top. Okay, so now I want to take this piece of the trunk, whoops, and this first branch, because that was the one I erased in, and this writing, and I do want to bring them together because I want to fill this little mess that I made here and clean it up. So there's a couple ways that I can merge. I can pick one and then merge down, and it'll merge one at a time. So it'll merge this one with the one right below it, and then merge that one right below it. But the way that I typically do it more often is I pinch the layers together. So I'm just going to go from layer 13 to 15 with my fingers and go, and it's going to merge them together. Now remember, if I want to move Mario's name now, I can't because it's part of the trunk of the tree now. It's all carved in. But what I can do now is grab my brown, come up to my primary color here, drag it down and fill it. See how my threshold's really low there? Because I was messing with that earlier. I'm going to try it again. Whoopsie. I'm going to grab my brown and I'm going to hold it, my finger there. Now it's too high. Oh, because I undid my merge. Darn it. Okay, let's try this again. Merge those. Yep. Now grab my brown, flood, bring the threshold up. Can you see that where it's filling in as I bring the threshold up? So if I don't go, I like to do it a little on the lower side because then I can just go and fill it in with my pen. Ooh, or even more fun, I haven't used smudge yet. So I've got this black outline that's just a mess. I want to smudge that a little bit so it kind of looks like bark. So I'm going to grab my smudge tool and I'm going to look for, let's see, I think there actually is a like a wood grain. They're organic, maybe? No. Vintage touch-ups. Oh, you can import, by the way, tons and tons of different brushes. Where is it? Textures, maybe? Look how many there are. I thought there was a wood one. Well, that's okay. I'll just grab organic. No. Water. No. I want something that's going to end up looking, here we go, like tree bark. So I'm going to do this Gasinski ink, and I got my smudge tool selected. I notice here that it's kind of medium width. If I slide this up and down, I can see what the brush is going to look like, but also about how big it's going to be. So I want it to fit inside that branch in the trunk. So I'm going to go like 25% if I can. Now when I smudge, it's kind of like when you use pastels or charcoals and you smudge on it. See how it drags it like that? I want to zoom in and just get the black, and it's kind of like smudging paint or smudging chalk. You can keep dragging. It'll pull in the white from the background, just so you know. So what I could do is actually add some with my, now when you hold down, by the way, to grab your color, it automatically reverts to the brush, just so you know. I'll show you where Phil's found. I'm going to add some black lines inside this branch here and then go to back to smudge. So then I have something to actually smudge. Now see how it kind of went a little bit crazy there. This might have been a good case for why I should have waited to merge the Mario name, because now I'm smudging Mario too. One more time, I'll show you to fill. Whatever shape you have, as long as it's solid or closed, not solid. So I know that when I merged those branches that it was filled with brown on the top. Let me just draw it like a real little branch. This will not fill because it's open down here at the bottom and up at the top. So I can fill that like that. And then all I have to do to fill it is pick whatever color I want. I'm going to drag, I wish I could show you. I'm going to drag from that little brown dot down across the screen to that inside of this branch. And then before I let go, I'm going to make sure it doesn't flood the whole page. If it doesn't, it's because up at the top where it says color drop threshold, right there, it's because the threshold is right. If I still am holding my finger down. If I have that threshold set too high, it floods the page. If I have it set too low, it leaves gaps between there and the edge. So I just go till it's full and let go. Does that help? Okay, so now can you see how that smudging added kind of crummy texture, but texture nonetheless? You can get really fancy with your fills. I'm going to show you one. I like to, when I'm out and about, see things that look like faces and stuff. And I had seen this rock and I was like, oh, I'm going to draw this rock. Here was the original rock. So I wanted my drawing to look, I don't know why, but I wanted it to look like the rock, which is silly because I should have just left it as a rock, but I added eyes and I added some shading and whoops, cancel. I used that very thing, the smudge tool, to get those browns and whites and tans and whatever all smushed together. So like, let's see the eyes where I smudged some brown in there. That's really fun to play with. So you don't have to like add paint on paint. You can take paint and smudge with its surroundings. Can't really do that with actual paint. Okay, so let's see here. I'm gonna keep going just a little bit because I want to show you a couple of other things here. When you have your layer view, so Sharon, this might be helpful for you. This is on slide 18 there. When you're looking at all your layers, there's some kind of cool things to know in there too. The layers menu is the one that looks like 2 layers of paper. To create a new layer, you just click on the plus. the picture you see is the thumbnail, so you'll know what's in that layer. Sometimes what happens to me is I'll be drawing like this baby here, and then my son will come in or the dog will start barking, I'll turn around and I'll accidentally make a mark like I just did there, or worse, a dot, and I don't notice it. What will happen when I do my layer, do you see how now the baby looks tiny in the thumbnail? I can tell that I have some litter, we'll call it, in that layer somewhere. So it helps me to be able to see where the extra foreign object is, so I can go in and look for it. Sometimes it's like I did it with white. I can't see it. So what I'll do is use, I'll talk about in a minute, and I cut the baby out and paste him in his own layer, and then delete the one that has the junk in it. So just know that sometimes if you're looking at your thumbnails, it's providing you some more useful information than you think. Once you have, so all of these are described down in that speaker notes there on there. But your background layer, some people like to draw with, say, like a blue background because it makes you feel more peaceful or creative or whatever. You can really easily change that down here, and you have those same exact color options as you did with the, when you're pulling a color. I sometimes like to have like a light blue just because it's kind of nice to draw on, but I don't necessarily want to save it on that blue. Whatever it's kind of like when you're building in Google Drawings, for example, when you want something exported with transparent background, it has that checkerboard look. But if you want it to be solid, you have to put white back there or fill the background. That's kind of the same concept. If I want to download either this whole image or these individual images as PNGs with no background, I can just turn that background layer off by unchecking it. So I'm working now in transparency mode. So that's, you can see where the edge of the paper, quote unquote, is, the canvas is, but it's really hard to see. Another thing I forgot to mention is I'm working in dark mode. I have almost all my gadgets and devices set to be dark mode. I just like it better. Supposedly it helps you sleep. I don't know. But if you want to change that, you can do that up in your menu. Oops, wrong one. You can change that in your settings too. So if yours looks different than mine, that could be why. So your background layer just kind of lives under there, but you can change it, the color, just by tapping on it and then changing the color just like you would any other way. So that's all housed, what your layers do. The information for that is all housed on slide 18. Slide 19 is what Sharon was asking. When I, instead of swiping left or right on the layer, if I tap, this goes into detail on what all of those are. So like when I'm working in Illustrator in Adobe, I have to name my layers because I want to make sure that I keep the hairdos in one category and the eyes in one category and the noses in one category or whatever. So this is the same thing. If you know that you want to keep tree branches or whatever in one group, you can tap on that particular thing and rename it just like you did with the layer. So here I'm going to call this layer the tree. Here's the baby Mario sitting in the chair. Baby. So you can rename either groups or individual layers. That's really helpful if you're working on a big project and you want to make sure that you remember what you put where. It just makes you more mindful of using the layers. There's a lot of things in here that I've never used in Procreate. I've used in Illustrator, but not in Procreate. Like, for example, the alpha lock, the mask, and the clipping mask. Again, I put in great detail those descriptions down here in the speaker notes, but it's basically like if I want to take this picture of Mario's face and crop it into the shape of a heart, that's masking. So I can either do a layer mask or a clipping mask to do that. I don't use that very often here, like I said. There's some other thing like the drawing assist that's somewhere, number 10. I've never used that. Invert changes colors, reference, but just know that it's there. Fill, okay, yeah, I already got that. So I want to get into here now, what are you going to do with this when it's finished? Because that's kind of the powerful thing, is being able to look back on your thinking and find it again or access it again to edit. Up along the top left, that's where you're going to find your actions menu, as well as get back to the gallery. The wrench is where your actions live. So what you can do in the wrench is add to your drawing or to your canvas. This is also where that copy, cut, paste thing that I discovered today. You can add text in there. So if you want to add a text box, Mario, or whatever you want to call it, the name of the episode, or have a quote bubble or something like that. I know I'm much better at typing than I am at writing, especially like trying to make different fonts and stuff. But so that's in there. You also have the adaptations you can make to your canvas itself. So animation assist, you can actually animate in here. It'll give you little guides to show you how far away to make the next one, and copy and paste. There's all kinds of stuff you can do in there. If you want your canvas without having to rotate it with your fingers, you can do it in there. Share is how you actually export your picture. Now, one thing I did remember when I earlier said I had cheated, I don't know that I really necessarily call it cheating, but one of the things that Sylvia Duckworth told us was practice, obviously, to get better at it, but to build your visual vocabulary, have a set of icons that you can save and readily access the next time you need it. So one of the things that I can do is any layer that I have turned on over here. So like not this grid. I want the leaf. I don't need the text. I'm just going to delete that one. Any layer that I have selected to be on, when I go over to the action menu and I say share, I can either share the entire image as one of these formats, or I can share the layers. The layers are one way that you could quickly grab your assets, which is what they're called in Illustrator, but to grab those so that you can use them again later on. So I want to save those as PNGs so that if I actually decide to finish watching this episode and sketchnote it, I could quickly pull those branches in. I could pull Mario's face in, baby Mario, the leaves, whatever it wants to be. So I tend to just save them to my device here. So what I did was I went into my my iPad and I looked at, here's some of the other things that I saved over time. So I have different icons with my face. So if I'm showing like my reaction to something, I can quickly grab an annoyed face or a surprised face or whatever it is. Same with the emojis, a clock, creativity, critical thinking, some of those concepts, the conceptual words that I was talking about. You can tell here I have the whiz bang or bang, whatever that's called. I use that one a lot because like the brain, any of those that you just know you're going to want to be able to access again later, you can save those as individual images and they'll go just right to your device. So yeah, you can see that I have those there, and then I've saved these ones. What happens is they export as PNGs, as transparent images. When I go to crop this, it's going to change it to a JPEG, so it's going to be filled. So more often than not, I just go ahead and leave it this way and pull it in and then trim the rest out, which is what I'll get to next. But just know that's found in that actions menu up there, along with just a whole bunch of other stuff. This is where I played that video for you. Your preferences is where you can change your light or dark mode. You can, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do in there. And the help menu, by the way, that handbook that I was talking about, here's one place to access it. I actually years ago downloaded this handbook to my Apple Books. And so I have it just living on this device all the time. So that's the actions menu. I'm going to talk real quick about this one right here. This is selections, and it's the one that looks like the ribbon there. Again, I gave you way more information than you need, but let's say I decided I wanted to take that baby. No, let's say I wanted to take Mario's name and crop it out of that tree so that I can fill the tree in. So in that case, I'm going to choose that layer. Just make sure it's selected by turning it blue over there. I'm going to use that ribbon or selection tool. And here's some options that I have. I can automatic, I've never used that. I want to actually freehand it. I want to draw around the name, but I could do rectangle or ellipse too. So I could select it like that. Once I've done that, I can do all of these things down here. I can fill. When Sharon, when you were asking where's fill, here's another place that you can do that. So if you've selected something by highlighting it or whatever, you can fill it from there. What I want to do though is freehand this. Come on. And I'm just going to get in as close as I can. Oh, whoops, I'm still on ellipse. Hold on. Freehand. You can zoom way in. And also if you tap instead of whatever, swiping your finger on it, it might help you to get a little more precision. I don't really care about being super careful here, but I'm going to just kind of go like this. So now I've selected it and I don't necessarily want to do any of these things here. I am going to copy and paste it. I don't want to use the button though. I want to use my new trick. So with that selected, I'm going to take 3 fingers and swipe down. I'm going to cut that out of there and I'm going to paste it again in just a minute to show you what it does. But for now, just know that it's pasted. I want to fill in that hole. So I've got my brown selected. I'm just going to shoop and fill in the hole there. Easy peasy. I've got the threshold set kind of low, so maybe I'll increase that just a little bit. Ta-da. Okay, so now to paste, I'm going to 3-finger swipe again and paste. And now I can move Mario's name, oops, around without it being in the tree. Now notice, because I cut it out of the tree, it's got tree guts still stuck to it. That was my mistake in merging that earlier. It probably would save me time to just rewrite his name instead of actually trying to clean this up. But just know it's something you can do. A lot of times, like if I've merged like that one tree branch with the other tree branch, they're not together. That cut and paste trick is much more effective, but that's where you can do that. So there's all kinds of options in here, again, described down below in the notes about what each of those things does. And then transform. That's a super useful one that I use a lot. What you can do with that one, I'm going to take this picture of Mario and I'm going to, with that layer selected over here on the right, I'm going to click on the arrow, which is the transform button. I can do all kinds of stuff here. If I do freeform and I click on, I'm going to go to this next one here to show you. Oh no, it's this one. These are called nodes, the little elements that you see here, and they all do something different. This one rotates the bounding box, which is called. The green one rotates his head, but all these other little nodes will let me either shrink him, grow him, whatever. If I have free form and I long hold on, like say the corner, this is where I can adjust the perspective on an object. That's really fun when you're trying to draw something that you want it to appear like it's going off in the distance, not a 2-dimensional head. I don't recommend that, but that's where you would do that. So if it was like a box or a playing card and you want it to look like it's offset to be going off into the distance, you can do that there. Flipping it horizontally, if you noticed that first picture I had of Mario, the actual photograph, his photo was facing that way, but I had turned it this way. You can really easily flip it upside down, 45 degrees, whatever. You can also expand that size so that it fills the screen. And then because he is the subject of this entire video, Oops, maybe I'll just move his face right up to the top layer. Ta-da! Hey, Mario. So that transform box is, or menu, sorry, here is one that I use actually quite often. Sometimes when I'm not sure where something is, I think it was the last time we did this class, I was trying to find where to adjust the opacity of an object. So say I want to make Mario's face kind of see-through so I can put it to the back. I could not remember where it was. I can either start clicking around, which is typically what I most often do, is just start clicking stuff until I find it. But that's a useful time to use that help setting and actually find it, or go on to the Procreate handbook and look. Because I mean, if you look here, there's so many menus and so many options within each menu, and each thing does multiple things. If I hold my finger down on one of them, sometimes sub menus pop up. So just know you can do a lot of stuff in a lot of different places. Getting to the end here, these are kind of some fun stuff. I want to go back to a different drawing and show you a couple that I've used these features on. These are the adjustments. So if you start getting into things that you want to have a little bit more detail, say, I'm going to find, where's that guy? It's a pickle. I think it's in one of the sketch 50. Oh, no, sorry. Please hold while I search my memory for this one specific drawing. Nope, it's a pickle. I wanted it to look like it was a pickle standing on a hill with a shadow. Why did I want to do this? Well, because I foolishly asked my colleagues, what should I draw? And they gave me this super weird random idea of a pickle walking in the snow. So I did it, game on. I like a challenge. This is, to see that shadow down there and the perspective, the blur, that was a mash of several different things. So if I open the layers, of course, you can't see what I did because I merged it all, but I'll tell you what I did. I went, oh, here's another one where I used the shadow, but it's okay. I went to the object that I wanted to be shadowy. So in this case, Mario's beautiful face. I'm going to shrink it up a little so you can actually, whoa, see. When you have it on freeform, by the way, if you move the corners, the nodes, it won't move in perspective, you know? So if you select uniform, it'll keep it the right ratio. Okay, so I'm gonna put him up there. I'm actually gonna duplicate this layer. So I'm gonna swipe and duplicate. So now there's two Marios. What I'm gonna do with the bottom one is go in here to the adjustments. Whoops. This one, the little magic wand. And I'm gonna change the layer to be really dark, like really dark. No, maybe it's not this sheet. See, it would help if I was like an art person. I want it to be all the way, whoops, layer, maybe saturated. Oh, it would help if I could see what I'm doing. Yikes! Hold on, I'll get this figured out. Sorry, Mario. Oh my gosh, you're so scary. Okay, brightness, there it is. I want it to be completely dark. Okay, so this will eventually be the shadow. So now that I have it turned all the way to not bright, I'm going to go back here to this Gaussian blur. And just like I did with the threshold on the fill, I'm going to play with this by moving my finger. The more I do it, the more it blurs and disappears. So I want it to be just kind of shadowy, like maybe like that. Again, I have to try to remember how I changed the transparency. I think it's in here. Maybe. Nikki, do you remember? I had this exact thing last time. I was like, I'm going to remember it. how to do the transfer. And it's really obvious once you find it. It's like, oh yeah, duh. I can't remember where it is. Maybe? No. Well, we're just going to leave it nice and dark. You can change the transparency and it's somewhere super obvious and it's not hard, but I can't think of what it is. So I've got his shadow there. I'm going to put his face back on it. And now with that bottom layer, I'm just going to select the arrow key and offset it just a wee little bit so that it looks like it's kind of got a shadow behind him. Then what I can do if I want to is go back then to that free form and I can pull the corners of that shadow and bring it down so it looks like the light is shining behind him. So there's, I mean, holy moly, there's so many things you can do. And I would suggest just get in there and play with it. You don't have to do it with the intention of making anything or coming up with a creation, but just doodle. And if you haven't had a chance to watch that Sunny video yet, I highly recommend watching it because it could be a meme. It could be an article you saw on Twitter. It could be a lecture that you have to sit through on your PIR day. It could be with notification to your admin, right, Lisa? It could be literally anything where you want to tune your brain into your arm, into your body to actually internalize that information, starting with stick people. Again, I put the link here to the handbook in there. It's a fantastic resource. I pulled most of that information from you or for you today to put into that the speaker notes there, because like I said, there were some things that I didn't even know until today. I'd been doing it the hard way all along. But play, just play, doodle and play. What questions do you guys have? None? I know it's not none.
I'm just gonna comment that shadow is crazy.
Yeah. If you can find where to make it more transparent, that would be amazing because then it looks really cool. I don't remember where to do it. Yeah, but thanks. So, oh, good question, Melissa. Any age of students can use it. I have little drawings in here from my son when he was 7 or 8, I think. But the issue is getting them an iPad. It's well, maybe Sharon. They have to be able to have access to an individual device because it's one of those apps that lives on the device. So if you have one-to-one devices or access to one-to-one devices, it would be a really cool app to use. There are several others if Procreate, for one thing, because it's paid. Adobe Draw, I don't think it's called Adobe Draw anymore, but it's Adobe's version of Procreate. Paper by 53 is a great one. Sketchbook, I think, used to be free, but there's several different tools that you can use online to get it to. It's just getting them to draw, starting with maybe pencil and paper. Oh, awesome. Perfect, Nikki. Gradient, maybe it might be gradient. Let's see. Oops. Okay, what else? What else?
Yeah, I was going to say my daughter's been using this for quite a while. She's a 6th grader now, but she will open the iPad and draw while she's watching television or watching a movie or something like that. And she really loves to bring in images she finds from the internet of the characters from the movie and then draw over top of them and remove the image. And that's where a lot of her drawings have come. I think I sent Anne one where she was watching America's Got Talent, maybe, and she drew one of the contestants, and Anne knew right away who it was.
I did, because we were watching it too. Oh, that's so cute. Like here with these ones with Mario and Henry. Tony Vincent does a lot. If you've never taken a workshop from Tony Vincent, holy cow, I recommend it highly, highly. But he does a lot with like visual learning and how kids learn visually. And he has an entire thing called shapegrams, where he teaches you to teach your kids to build things out of shapes. But the other thing he does is he draws like this. And so I learned how to do this from him. You just don't overcomplicate. Thank you. Yep. Learninginhand.com. You just draw like the outline of it, fill it, make a new layer, trace around his eyes, fill them, make a new layer. You just move them around as you're doing it, because then you don't have to try to look from one to the other. I'm sure a real artist would probably consider it cheating, but we just know it's using our resources efficiently.
Next week, we're going to talk about audio storytelling using the tool StoryCorps. And I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's it's both an app and a website and a lot of different teacher resources that we can go through. And it's got lesson plans and prompts for you to have students interview family members or interview people and audio record. It's just the audio. And then the final one is going to be about a tool called Timeline, Night Lab Timeline, which it's kind of cool. You input a whole bunch of information into a spreadsheet and it creates an interactive digital timeline, which is a really fun way to have kids tell a story using the timeline feature. So those are the last two media labs that we'll be having, finishing up the month of April. We'll take a little bit of break, and then I'm putting together a summer media lab series that will start mid-June with about 5 sessions for the summer, inspire the digital storytelling or the media creation tool. So we'll be showcasing some of our other PBS programs in each of those workshops. So you are all probably on our newsletter now, so you'll get an opportunity to learn more about those and how to register for those as summertime comes. So thank you so much, Anne, for sharing your talents today and giving us all this fun ideas. I hope people are, if anything, encouraged to doodle and sketch, whether it's digital or on paper.
I hope so too. I double dog dare you.
All right.
Triple. Thank you.